All right, my lovers, we're going to talk today about when you're buying a bike online, using the geometric numbers, the geometry that the company provides to give you an idea of how the bike is going to ride and handle and the characteristics of the bike before you buy it. We're going to be using bikeinsights.com. This site gives you the geometry numbers of any prospective bike you might be looking at. Keep in mind that this mostly deals with modern bikes. I tried to look up my 1990s touring bike and it wasn't in there. So, I'm not sure what the cutoff date is, but this is a great site for modern bikes. The best way to get a bike would obviously be to ride it yourself, but given that online shopping has become such a big thing in the biking industry, it's not a bad idea to get yourself familiar with the geometry numbers, and it'll give you a rough idea of how the bike might ride before you're able to purchase it. All right, let's get it. Let's decode the numbers so that you are informed before you make your purchase. You're not trying to spend $2,000 on a bike build before you kind of understand what type of bike you are buying. Kind of like buying a pair of shoes without getting a fit first. So let's look at the 5 metrics that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the stack and the reach. We're going to be talking about the stack to reach ratio. We're going to be talking about the head tube angle plus the trail. We're going to be talking about the chainstay length, and we're also going to be talking about the bottom bracket drop. These numbers should be able to give you a great idea of what you are looking at when all of these geometry numbers keep hitting you in the face and you're getting confused. All right, the stack, consider that the height of the bike. The reach is the length. Now, a low stack, long reach, aggressive race fit. A high stack with a short reach, upright comfort. So those are the two extremes, and anywhere in between there, you're kind of looking at what bike you're trying to find. So a rule of thumb, if you're in between sizes, prioritize reach for control and the stack for comfort. We are going to be using 2 of the bikes that I regularly ride for our comparisons today for our frame of reference. I have a Poseidon Triton and a Fezzari Shafer. For more clarity, to give people an idea, I'm riding the Poseidon Triton in an XXL, extra large, and I'm riding the Shafer in an extra large. So when I give you these numbers, they're based on those sizes. The Poseidon Triton has a stack of 584 millimeters and a reach of 417 millimeters. Meanwhile, the Fezzari Shafer has a stack of 631 millimeters and a reach of 401 millimeters. This means that the Shafer is more upright, whereas the Triton is a little bit more stretched out. Now, the next metric we're going to look at is the stack to reach ratio. Now, this number sums up the bike's posture. Anything under a ratio of 1.45 is more of an aggressive stance on the bike, meaning you're going to be more in a road bike or something that's more racy or something that's built more for speed. 1.45 to a 1.55, that's going to be more neutral, so maybe your hybrid bikes. Maybe something that's in between an all-road type of bike, and anything that's 1.55 and above is more of an upright position. The Triton sits at a 1.4, which is an aggressive fit, going to be more racy, whereas the Shafer at a 1.57 is more chill, more relaxed, more of an upright cruiser. And now we have the head tube angle. This is going to be measured in degrees. A steep head tube angle, 72 to 74 degrees, is going to be for more twitchy, more quick steering, so something you're going to see more on a maneuverable bike. And a slacker head tube angle, 65 to 69, is going to be more stable on the descents, more like a mountain bike or a gravel bike. But the head tube angle doesn't tell the whole story. The trail also matters. So the more trail it has, the more stable it is. And the less trail it has, the twitchier it is. So for example, on the Triton, we have a 73.5 head tube angle with a 44.2 millimeter trail. This is more snappy, more nimble than the Shafer, which is at a 68.9 head tube angle with an 81.9 millimeter trail. This is more mountain bikey. This is super stable. And if you were able to load the bike up, it would be really stable with a load on it. Okay, so now we're gonna look at the chainstay, the distance between basically the cassette and the crankset. Now, the short chainstays, anything under 420 millimeters, is going to be quick and playful, probably good acceleration. Longer chainstays are more stable and great with gearing. So if you're going up kind of loaded down, Something like a touring bike, you're going to want a longer chainstay. Something where you're going to be doing a lot of ascents and descending, you probably want a chainstay that's going to feel really stable going downhill, and a shorter chainstay on something that's a little bit more zippier. The Triton has a chainstay of 408 millimeters, and you can certainly feel it's more responsive, better accelerating bike, versus the Shafer that's 430 millimeters. It's a little bit more sluggish on the acceleration, but really, really smooth going downhill. It really handles rugged terrain well also. So the bottom bracket drop is the next metric we will look at. The more drop you have, for example, 75 millimeters, that's going to hug the road more, but you're going to be more prone to pedal strikes. Less drop at 50 millimeters, it's going to clear rocks, but it's going to feel taller. I feel that bottom bracket drop should always be considered when you're thinking about the crank length. Not necessarily the height of your body, but I think these should be paired with the bottom bracket drop, because it's not something that's well known. It's not really something that's talked about a lot when people talk about the type of cranks lengths you're trying to choose. But I think this has more to do with the drop and the type of riding, and if you want to avoid pedal strikes, versus how tall you are, because I think you can compensate in how high or low you put the seat post with your crank arms. So always consider the bottom bracket drop when you're considering how long you want those crank arms to be. For the Triton, it's a 70 millimeter, so that's kind of in the middle, kind of more of a road bikey kind of feel. And the Shafer is 77 millimeters. It's lower and it has a more planted feeling, and you definitely feel that. So let's look at the geometry and how it would matter versus the style of bike that you want. So if you're looking for a road racing bike, you want the long reach, a low stack, a steep head tube angle for the twitchiness or the feel of the bike, and short stays for the acceleration. For a gravel endurance bike, you want a high stack, you want a slack head tube angle, and a long wheelbase. So you want an upright position, a little bit more relaxed geometry so it'll be stable on those downhills, and a little bit more stability with the long wheelbase. For mountain bike trails, you want the slack head tube angle, the low bottom bracket, and the long reach. For commuting, you want an upright fit for stable handling. So looking at the commuting of a bike, if you want to know for the comfort, I look at that stack to reach ratio. And then for the stability of the handling, look at the head tube angle, and it'll kind of give you a general idea of what kind of bike you want to choose. Okay, so we'll look at a bike that I have not ridden, and we'll compare it to a bike that I have ridden. Let's take the Primos Mono, because that's a bike that's very intriguing to me. It's a new company based out of Portland, Oregon. So their Mono is a bike packing tank, right? It's really made for going a little bit off the trail, and has a wide tire clearance, like 57 millimeters for 700cc. Now let's look at the geometry aspects of it. 71-degree head tube angle. So that's actually pretty nimble, but the 445 millimeter chain stays are going to give it stability when going downhill. The 65 millimeter bottom bracket drop is going to mean that it's probably going to clear some rocks, but you might have a tall feeling on it. Stack to reach ratio is 1.43 on this. So it's actually kind of an aggressive stance for that bike. So you're going to be in a more of an aggressive position, but it's going to be kind of twitchy in terms of kind of nimble, but also stable. So now obviously nothing is going to be perfect, and how these numbers pair together is the part of you having to ride it to see how that all plays out, but it gives you kind of a good idea of what you're getting into before you try it. So it's tuned for gear hauling, off-roading, touring, stable when loaded, but not ideal for a single track play. So it's probably not a mountain bike, but it'll give you a little bit of rugged abilities, more so than a regular hybrid bike, or kind of more onto the gravel side. So now let's look at the Poseidon X, which I do own, and it'll give you a little bit of an idea of what we're looking at. This is more of an all-road budget machine. Little bit of gravel in it, kind of little bit more of an all-road bike, I'd call it. Okay, 72-degree head angle. So it's gonna be kind of nimble, pretty nice. 66 millimeter trail. Okay, so that is a little bit on the stable side. It's kind of in between. It's kind of gonna be a little bit stable, but also a little bit maneuverable. And I would definitely say, comparing it to the Fezzari Shafer, definitely more maneuverable. The 425 millimeter chainstays, I'd say, it's definitely a very stable ride going downhill and uphill, but it may not be the quickest bike that exists, right? But pretty decent. The stack to reach ratio is a 1.65, so it's got a really upright position. So it's agile, it's comfy, it's ready for weekday commutes or for weekend gravel. It's very much a do-it-all gravel bike or all-road bike for the budget-conscious rider. I think the one thing that keeps it from being more gravelly is the tire clearance, but the geometry is very stable off-road. So if you're crossing state lines with straps and bags, the go-to is the mono for touring. But if you want mixed pavement, gravel, and a little bit more fun and zippy, then I say the Poseidon X is more of that Swiss Army knife. Let me know what kind of bike you ride. Let me know how the geometry numbers, if this helps any, especially when you're choosing a bike online. Be interested to know what kind of bikes you have or what kind of bikes you would want me to review based on these numbers to give you an idea of what you might be looking for. Thank you, my lovers. Hopefully we'll talk to you soon.